What's going on, my guys? Back at you again with not one, not two, part 3 of this Exchanging Numbers series. So in part 1, talked a little bit about my strategy and why I offer the woman my number. In part 2, I talked about some of the pros of that approach. And now in this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the cons and some of the downsides as far as offering your number instead of asking the woman for her number. Thank you guys for checking out the video. Hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. All right, fellas, so let's get into some of the cons as far as offering the woman your number instead of taking hers. So one of the first ones is gonna be, let's say you met this woman on Friday, you were out at a lounge, party, club, wherever the case may be, and let's say you happen to meet multiple women and exchange numbers or give your number to multiple women that night. Or let's say you met this woman on a Friday and then the following day you met another woman at the gym, the following day you met another woman at the grocery store, right? Let's say you get a text and the text reads, "Hey, it was great meeting you the other day," and that's all it says, right? It doesn't say her name, it doesn't give any more information. Because you gave her your number, you don't really know which of those women whom you met could be texting you, right? She didn't say her name. She didn't give you any more information that you can use to identify her. If she didn't say, "Hey, it was great meeting you at the gym," or "It was great meeting you at this place," if she just said, "Hey, it was awesome meeting you, we should go out sometime," and you don't know who it is, now you kind of have to do some investigating. You have to do a little bit of detective work. Worst comes to worst, you may even have to just say, like, "Who is this?" If you can't figure out who it is. And that could create an awkward situation if you're asking, "Who is this?" And she's like, "Oh, I feel like this guy should remember me." Or maybe she's like, "Oh, he probably met multiple women that night," and she gets discouraged by that. So it could create an awkward situation if you give her your number and you've given your number out to multiple women that you've met, and then you get a text that reads, "Hey, it was great meeting you," and you're not able to figure out who it is. That's one thing that you may potentially have to deal with if you're giving out your number instead of asking the woman for hers. So that's one of the first cons. Con number 2 is, just like I talked about in the previous video on some of the pros with giving her your number, you don't have control over the situation, over when you hear from her. It could be that same night she texts you, she could text you the following day, she could text you in 2 or 3 days, she could text you the next week, right? You don't really have any control over when she reaches out to you. Now, you know yourself better than I do. If you're someone who gets discouraged by that, or if you're someone who you start to think, well, she wasn't really that interested in me because I haven't heard back from her, within a day or so. If you get discouraged because you don't have that immediate gratification, this strategy of giving your number, it may not be the best for you if you find that problematic. If you're not comfortable being somewhat indifferent to the outcome, if you're not comfortable, going several days, possibly several days without hearing from her, this is a strategy that's probably not going to work for you, because that very well could happen and it could leave you discouraged. Whereas if you took down her number, then you have a little bit more control of the situation. You can text her whenever you choose to text her. So that's the second con, that's the second downside to this approach. And on the topic of giving the woman your number and not being sure when or if you're gonna hear back from her, I have a pretty funny story to share with you guys. And this had happened several years ago. I had met a woman at the mall and I ended up giving her my number. And I was doing some shopping. I was in the store looking at some shirts, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, my friend, she thinks you're cute, but she's a little too shy and she didn't want to come up to you and approach you. but she wanted to say hi. So I'm like, okay, where is she? I'm asking where she is so I can get a glimpse, so I can inspect the situation that I'm dealing with. And she's like outside of the store. I don't know if wherever you guys are, they have stores and malls where they have those massage chairs that are like on the outskirts of the store. So before you go into the store, sometimes at the end of a certain section of a mall, there'll be like a couple massage chairs where people can just sit and you put in money and get a massage. So she was sitting in one of those chairs. So I go up to her and I'm like, hey, your friend said that you thought I was good looking. How's it going? I go up to her and introduce myself. And she's like, oh my God, did he really say that? And I look back over my shoulder and he's like standing there like, like cackling, just having a blast, just laughing. So it immediately told me that she didn't tell him to go do that. He was just playing a joke on her. And he went up to me and told her that she thought I was attractive. So that made me go over there, but she didn't actually tell him to do that. So, I'm like, okay, whatever. I just rolled the situation. We ended up talking for a little bit and she seemed pretty nice. I did find her attractive. So I just said, hey, you know what? How about you take down my number? And if you're interested, we'll go out sometime. And I just left it at that. Now, even though we had a pretty decent conversation, just from reading her body language and how she was interacting with me, it wasn't like she wasn't rude or she wasn't standoffish, but at the same time, she wasn't, doing backflips showing that she was incredibly interested in me. So at that point, I was like, well, this is already an awkward situation and I'm not really sure if you're interested. This is me thinking to myself. So that's what led me to give her my number rather than asking her for hers. And it's pointless and maybe she's not that interested. So I just gave her my number. Now, lo and behold, I think this was on maybe a Saturday or a Sunday. She ended up texting me, not that day, not the next day, not the day after that. The following weekend, I get a text as I'm leaving the gym, like, hey, it's so-and-so. And I'm like, an entire week, after I gave her my number. Now, I wasn't frustrated about the situation. To be honest, I had, after like the day after meeting her, it totally slipped my mind. I wasn't even thinking about it. So had I not heard from her, it wouldn't have frustrated me. I wouldn't have been stressed out about it. It was totally like out of sight, out of mind. But when she texted me, I was like, oh, that's right. We met over at the mall. And that shows you that if I was someone who I was really interested in her and I was waiting several days, when's she gonna text me, and I started to get discouraged, that strategy of giving her my number probably wouldn't suit well for me because I have that kind of personality where I would get discouraged. Because I don't, and because I was kind of indifferent to the situation, it didn't matter to me that she texted me the following weekend. I just carried on with the conversation and asked her and learned a little bit more about her, and same thing for me. But I wasn't stressed out about it because I was indifferent to the outcome and I was indifferent to the situation. Now, you kind of have to have that mindset if you're gonna be using that approach of giving women your number instead of taking down theirs. So again, guys, you have to do what suits you and what approach fits your personality. Like I said, with that situation, I wasn't stressed out about it. I wasn't even thinking about her as the days were progressing. It wasn't like I had my phone, on the table and I was just looking at it, waiting, rocking back and forth. That wasn't what I was doing. It wasn't like I was sitting there like Leonardo DiCaprio in The Departed. Looking at the phone, what should I do? I wasn't taking that approach. It was just, hey, if she texts me, she texts me. If not, no big deal. So if you can have that approach and you can be a little bit indifferent to the situation, then I think that strategy works for you. If not, then maybe it doesn't. All right, guys. So now we're gonna get into the third con of this approach, and that is, to be quite honest, that you're going to inevitably, if you're giving out your number and you're not taking down the woman's number, you're gonna be leaving some opportunities on the table. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say you approached 10 women, and after the conversation, you asked them all for their number. Let's say 7 or 8 of them decided to give you their number. If you went up to those same women, those same 10 women, and instead of getting their number, you gave them yours, you wouldn't get 7 or 8 of them texting you back. You might get maybe 3, 4, who knows, maybe 5 of them, right? So if you're someone who's into quantifying things and you're like, well, what's gonna give me the most opportunities to have conversations and the most opportunities to set up dates, then yes, if you always ask a woman for her number, more women are likely to give you their number, and it's just easier to do because there's not that added layer of them having to text you. When you put that qualifier of, okay, I'm gonna give her my number and she has to text me, that step in and of itself is gonna create just a barrier for some women. Some women aren't gonna wanna do that. They're like, I'm not that interested in him enough where I'm gonna text him, so you're not gonna hear from them, right? So like I said, if you're someone who measures different strategies or different approaches by numbers and quantifying things, then yes, giving your number out is gonna lead to less women texting you back or less conversations happening via text than if you ask them for your number. But again, it all depends on how you look at it. My approach is, I'm kind of setting a qualifier, and if she's not that interested to begin with, there's no point in us exchanging numbers. There's no point in taking her number. So I'm just gonna give her mine, and if the ones that are interested are gonna reach back out to me, the ones that aren't. I'm not gonna sit here and stress out about numbers and what's gonna maximize the number of chances, if that makes sense. And I will say, guys, whatever you decide to do, it's all about perspective and what mindset you bring to the table and what value you feel like you bring to the table. I'll be honest with you, if you're someone who maybe hasn't gone out on a date in several months, or you're not someone who women tend to pursue or who they tend to go out of their way to try to set up dates with, or they show a lot of interest, if you're not that kind of person, then yes, you may have to play kind of the numbers game in a sense of asking for their number. Whereas if you're comfortable, leaving some opportunities on the table, and you're not stressed out about, I haven't gone on a date in a long period of time, and you don't have that sort of anxiety towards dating and towards dealing with women, that's gonna have a role over the situation, So like I said, the approach that you use, it depends on how comfortable you are, kind of giving up control and what you feel like you bring to the table. If you're a guy who feels like, I have a lot of value, women tend to pursue me, they tend to show interest in me, then yeah, you're someone who can afford to just, I'll give them my number, and if I hear from them, I hear from them. Whereas if you don't, and you feel like, yeah, she's probably not gonna reach out to me, then you may be better suited off, asking her for her number, and you have to do a little bit more of the pursuing up front. I want to make sure that I stress that to you guys, that not everything with the videos that I put out and the content and some of the strategies, not everything is a one size fits all. I'd be lying to you guys if I said, this one approach is going to work for the billions of men out there. It's about the approach that feels natural and feels comfortable for you and fits your personality, right? So I'm wrapping this thing up. I feel like I've said enough. I've driven home enough of the pros and cons for this different approach. We're gonna get into some other content, enough with the exchange of numbers. You guys are probably like, man, can we talk about something else? Yes, we're gonna get into some other topics, but I wanted to cover some of those different pros and cons of those different approaches. So that being said, Hope you guys got some value from this video. Hope you guys learned a little bit. Definitely like the video, leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel, that way you guys can be the very first to know when we come out with new content. Remember, we're putting out content, new videos every single week. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Lost and Found Dating channel. I'm out. Peace.